So, as president and CEO of the Discovery Center in Halifax, Dov Bercovici and his team are responsible for generating the 7 best fiscal years in the 29-year history of the center, with fundraising revenue, admissions, and surpluses at all-time highs. Dov is also leading the construction of a uniquely Atlantic Canadian $20 million state-of-the-art science center on the Halifax waterfront, which will open in 2016. Prior to leading the Discovery Center, he was vice president operations at Acadia University and general manager of the World Trade Center. He has been very involved with the community, serving as president of the Canadian Association of Science Centers and on the Destination Halifax, Canadian Progress Club, and the Atlantic Theatre Festival. In 2000, Dov received the Progression of the Year Award from the Canadian Progress Club in Halifax. In 2006, he was a recipient of Canada's Top 40 Under 40 Award, recognized in the Globe and Mail for his work and community contributions. Today, Dov will discuss building your community with STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, math, and how it ties into work that Rotary is doing around the world. The A in STEAM is what many recognize to be the essential spark that leads to scientific discovery, innovation, and entrepreneurship. Please welcome Dov Bercovici.
Thank you, and just in case you didn't know, my daughter is in grade 8 at Goresbrook. Rebecca Bercovici, you might know her. Hopefully you like her, and you like each other. Well, thank you very much for those kind words, and congratulations to Lydia on that wonderful award. And really, that's why I'm here today. I believe in Rotary. I believe in groups like Rotary, Progress Club. In fact, I did my time in the Wolfville Rotary Club. An old colleague of mine just reminded me, and I had a lot of fun there. And now they have breakfast meetings at 7 a.m. I think I would have made more of those than the lunch meetings. But I really appreciate the opportunity to speak here. And when Stella, District Governor Stella, talked to me about this, and Andrew Boswell, a connection to Stella, talking about actually hosting the meeting at the new Discovery Center on the waterfront. But as you know, with projects, things take time to sort themselves out. And I'm going to talk to you quite a bit about that today, because the story of science promotion and the importance of science is weaved into the story about how this new Discovery Center will be built. And in fact, it'll be right across the street here from the Westin. Actually, construction is starting in July. And when they took the photo, I had all black hair, and as you could see, it's changed color. And you know what, I appreciate the profile and reading out a little bit about my background, but what they don't talk about is all the sleepless nights when you put your time into projects like this. And I know those of you that organized this conference, the District 7820, would have had a few sleepless nights as well putting this together, and this is no small undertaking either. So I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about science, a little bit of science peppered in, but more about community building and some of the lessons we've learned in building this new science center. I know that you have just gone through a number of workshops this morning and keynote speakers. Zoe Lucas, I believe, just spoke before. I'm sure she kept you awake, but I know I'm between you and lunch. So I'm going to condense it a little bit here today. We do have graphic representation there. The STEAM, the A in STEM. I think that's wonderful. But I thought I'd start off with a little quiz. I know Rotarians are very competitive. So I thought I would ask a question, a trivia question. And you all should know this. There should be somebody shooting their hand up. I'd like to know the name of the scientist, and there is a prize, the name of the scientist that invented the polio vaccine. Who just, I can't give it to you, Stella. Okay, you are the proud winner of a free family guest pass, or for adults, to the Discovery Center. Anytime, no limit, with my signature on the back. So let me tell you a little bit about STEAM and how it ties to Jonas, the inventor of the polio vaccine, and the primary mission of Rotary International, to complete this mission to make sure that children all over the world have this vaccine and immunization and so on. And in an interview with the American, I believe it was the American Academy of Research scientists, he was asked the question, what drew you to science and to your success in the field, especially being so successful coming up with the vaccine. And he said, I was not interested in science, but the human side of the equation and the human side of nature. So what's very interesting is that we think of, when you think of scientists, a lot of people still have the misconception they're stuck in a research lab, but there are scientists around us every day. You know, Zoe, who works on Sable Island doing tremendous work. There's doctors out there that are doing incredible work, and one of the founders of the Discovery Center, Dr. Richard Goldblum, is a pediatric oncologist, a pediatrician, sorry, I'm thinking about Jason Berman. He's a pediatrician, had a column in Reader's Digest, and one of his he proved scientifically that families that eat together, that have dinner together on a regular basis, tend to grow healthier children and have better relationships. So I'm dumbing that down a little bit, but a lot of the scientists that really focus on the human side of nature tend to be the more successful ones. So STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that today in the context of the new Science Center. So the question you might ask is, why do we build a new Discovery Center Science Center? Why is it even important? Well, there's lots of research. I could go through it. Mercer's Quality of Life Index says that cities with science centers tend to have more innovative populations. They tend to have a better quality of life and so on. But there's a little bit behind it, and there's a lot of research going on in how we learn. And there's something in our brains called mirror neurons, and Italian scientists studied this phenomenon. Basically, they studied monkeys. Monkeys kind of close to humans, and they looked at monkeys and found out that monkeys were emulating each other. How to crack a coconut, for example, and they were using something called mirror neurons. And some of the data around it, and they're doing further research on this, is that right now you're looking at me and I'm looking at you in the audience. I remember I might see that Ron is wearing a red tie. I might emulate a certain behavior or a skill, but when it's all said and done, a week from now, even an hour from now, 99% of what I'm observing with my mirror neurons will be forgotten. What scientists are trying to show is that when you raise adrenaline, you can cement information in your neural network. Now, common sense tells you that you can learn this way, but it's still not proven. Learning by doing is the simplest way to say it. So that's why we have flight simulators to teach pilots how to fly. That's why hands-on science has become so important, to learn the scientific methods by doing, by experimenting, and so on. So this whole concept of mirror neurons, raising the excitement level and the adrenaline, that is why when you learn to ride a bike, you never forget. That is why you learn these skills. Children start by observing other children riding bikes with their mirror neurons. But until they try to do it themselves, at the most basic level, this is why we learn. This is how we learn. So the Discovery Center, the concept of learning and science was extremely important to a group of founders about 30 years ago. Dr. Dick Goldblum, Gerhard Stroink, who's a physicist, a Dow retired physicist, and Liz Crocker, who everyone might know, the owner of Plovers, got involved and said, we need to do something for our children here in Atlantic Canada. We need to build a science center like they have in Europe, where they haven't forgotten the importance of learning hands-on skills. And we want to take this on the road, and it started as a bus, traveling roadshow, a vision 30 years ago. Well, 30 years later, we now have a significant operation, and we're going into schools all over, reaching 30,000 kids a year. And I notice a lot of parallels with Rotary and the work you're doing with youth around the world to expose them to experiences. When I was asked to speak here, I just said I have to do this. I want to come talk to the group about the new Science Center. Right now, we're the largest science center east of Montreal. When we build a new one, right now we're 23,000 square feet. When the new one is completed, it'll be close to 50,000. So it'll be an incredible facility. So you've heard a little bit about our success, and really our success mirrors the success in other science centers. One of the first science centers was the Exploratorium in San Francisco. You may or may not have heard of it. It's a wonderful facility. The Ontario Science Center was the first one in Canada. So from those first few science centers in North America, we now have 600 science centers in North America and over 2,000 globally. So it's become a very, very active, there's, you know, as you know, there's specialists in everything. We have science interpreters that walk the floor, and we have workshop specialists and so on. So it's become quite a field in itself, very important. And because of the nature of what we do, the hands-on, fun nature, families and visitors tend to spend more time in the facility because of the interactivity of the exhibits and the programs. So I'm not going to go through all our success, but let's say we've done very well up until this March break, where we were deluged with snow and no one left the house. But it's been going great. And in fact, one of the proudest programs that I'm personally proud of that we started was something called Science on the Road, where we have 3 young men and women that go into the schools. They're scientists, Dalles, St. Mary's, Mount St. Vincent, all UCCB, and they go into the schools across the province and deliver workshops that are curriculum based. So they may have something in grade 5 that's called All Cell That Ends Cell, and they have little microscopes and they learn about cell structures and so on in biology. So we're now reaching 30,000 youth across Nova Scotia, and I've had a couple of sorties into PEI in Newfoundland. One of the people that truly believes in science, and is a story of a teacher, a professor, and now a senator who learned his science in a one-room schoolhouse. And you'll hear a lot of those stories about scientists over the years. Many were born of immigrant families that had nothing. They just worked very hard and understood the human side of the equation. Senator Kelvin Ogilvie invented the gene machine and a drug called ganciclovir, which is treating AIDS patients with immunity problems around the world. And Senator Ogilvie, when you talk about his early years in science, if you ever hear him tell the stories, it was a lot through experimentation and having fun with what he was doing. And really, that's what we're trying to promote with the new center, is having fun. Making sure that science is accessible to all, the concepts of science, in a fun way, but not losing the integrity of the scientific method. And I'm going to talk about an exhibit we have later that teaches people about deduction and so on. So we had the opportunity, and for those of you that are starting a new project, it's extremely important to get a big partner on board very early. And I'm not talking just government. Quite often we go to government first. I think it has to be a private sector partner. So one of the first things we did, we found out that Nova Scotia Power across the way over here was not developing all of their space at once. And I threw out what's called a Hail Mary to the president of Nova Scotia Power. I wrote a letter, and sometimes these things work. And it's kind of ironic because I'm Jewish background, a Hail Mary. And I wrote a letter saying, look, I understand you have some space, surplus space that you want to develop. Would you like to work in partnership with us? Because there is a model. The Saskatchewan Science Center had a building donated by Sask Power to it, 50,000 square feet, and it's been in operation. I think it's been in operation for 30 years like us. And they've done very well working with the power company as one of their prime sponsors. And they kicked it off with a $1 million gift to name our energy gallery, teach people about energy. And it's very important when we take a sponsorship. I think I just want to point out, and this is important for you, what you don't want to do is be an infomercial for the sponsor. So we had those terms cleared right out of the way. Yes, we're getting $1 million, but we're illustrating all energy principles, from hydro and some of the basics using fossil fuels and so on. But we're just talking about the science. We're not preaching, don't do this or don't do that. We're telling people what happens if you continue on this path, as opposed to don't. We just give them, this is the facts, this is the science behind it, and so on. And we move into things like kinetic energy and chemical energy and so on. So we're illustrating all those principles. So we started a capital campaign. When you think about it, even though I have all this gray hair, we started a campaign, launched it in 2012, when we finally solidified the space with an agreement, a formal arrangement with Nova Scotia Power. And now we've raised 18 million of the 20 million towards the new center. So we made a, thank you. And Andrew Boswell, who serves on our board of directors, would know that's not an easy task, especially in Nova Scotia and Atlantic Canada. And it took some time, but we got there, and we made a conscious decision. So we're going to go ahead with construction now, and we have enough asks in motion that we feel that will be fully funded. And even if we have a little bit of debt at the end, it's a very manageable amount, as we're rent-free. And we consider that we're paying in our current space $400,000 a year rent, that's gone. Of course, there'll be costs, but we have a very good business model, sustainable model going forward to the new center. So we're in good shape there. Really, talk a bit about the expanded science center. If you think about what just happened with the Halifax Public Library, and when a new facility opens up in the community, and the pent-up demand. You go back to the oval, the skating oval on the Halifax Common, and the pent-up demand. And I think as we build and we get closer, when people start to see construction crews on the site, and we release more images about the new center, and the types of things and experiences we can create, not just for our children, young children, but for teenagers, for university students, for adults. We think that this center, when business people visit from other jurisdictions and provinces, will be something they'll want to visit. It's a place you have to see, and we're going to give you a little bit of a look inside the new center. And Andrew, I believe, has seen this video, and others may have, but I just wanted to show you again and talk a little bit about some of those experiences. I think that Rotary and the Discovery Center have what I call awesome community alignment. In terms of the work you're doing, I spent a couple years with Rotary and Wolfville. I know the work you do, first of all, trying to solve this polio crisis, but also engaging youth. It's extremely important. If you think about someone like Jonas Salk, an immigrant family living in the States, they didn't have access to a lot of opportunities. He showed some early promise. And the community, not just himself or his parents, the community invested in sending him to a school, I believe it was called the City College, and wasn't known as a top-notch school, but he had the opportunity with community sponsorship, and they worked them to death there. He worked very hard there, but at least he had the opportunity. I think about Nova Scotia with the focus on immigration, trying to bring in new immigrants. All it takes is one individual to come up with a cure or a solution to a problem we think is unsolvable today. It might be an individual, it might be a group, it might be people that have expertise, that have natural ability, like a Stephen Hawking, for those of you who've seen the movie. It was natural, it was innate, his ability. But some people just have a love for science and passion and work so hard and have so much community support that they come up with a solution, they come up with that eureka. And I think that the A in STEAM, the art portion, the human side of science, is what leads to the eureka. The scientific method is important. You can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You need to follow a process. However, quite often the solutions come with a eureka. For those that are scientists, you may or may not agree with me, but I believe that is the case for most people. So I think that the focus on youth and health science in our community, so if you have youth that are studying science, support them. But also arts, as long as it makes sense, it can make a contribution to the community. I couldn't believe how many members Rotary has now, 1.2 million around the world. If you think about the effort that's required, you're still in progress on the vaccine, but some of the other things that you could be doing by supporting youth with your programs, the Rotary Exchange, these are all making contributions. I call it a positive ripple effect. A little program here that in Nova Scotia or anywhere in the Rotary 7820 in PEI, Newfoundland, wherever, you make a difference, a small difference, but that has a ripple effect to other communities. So the new center is important on many levels. It's going to expose people to some of the most important things in our region, in the Atlantic Canadian region. We've already established partnerships with Science East in New Brunswick. We've had some dialogue with the Johnson Geoscience Center in Newfoundland. I understand they're trying to get a science center going in PEI in Charlottetown. They've tried a couple times, and actually one of our former board members has cottages in PEI, and we're talking about going there and giving them some tips. Maybe someday we can have 4 science centers, 1 in each province, and so on. So we're working towards that, but in the meantime, we got to stay focused on getting this one open first to show here's the model, this is the way to do it. And we have 5 marquee galleries. Water extremely important. The Dartmouth Club is here. Dartmouth used to be called the City of Lakes. It's now the Halifax Regional Municipality. That's not necessarily a bad thing, more resources. But Dartmouth, City of Lakes, Halifax, City of Trees. You can see some of the themes floating through there. But we're going to have an aquarium, touch tanks style aquarium. We decided not to go full-fledged with an aquarium because that requires a lot of specialized expertise. If you ever go to the new Jim Pattison Aquarium in Toronto, a $100 million facility. But we wanted to illustrate the properties of water, the science of water, buoyancy, how estuaries work, chemical experiments using water. So it's going to be a very interesting gallery, how the human body is made up of water, linkages to energy and water. So we're going to show through a lot of fun interactive experiences all about water. We'll have a flight gallery with a real plane that will be blown up. And in fact, we'll have 2 flight simulators. They'll teach people how to fly, to inspire people to flight, but also not just flight in our skies, but maybe a little bit beyond. Maybe some space travel will be tied into that. And of course, an energy gallery we talked about. Health, extremely important. All visitors are going to get what's called a health passport, and they'll be able to measure their own health in a non-intrusive way, like not saying drink 2 cans of Coke less a week, or don't drink, period. But it'll be all about your body, learning about your body in a positive way, in a fun way. You think about some of the things we have now. We have a running track at the current center where we're going to have what's called a hamster wheel. So people will be able to run on that and produce energy. And so the kids it's a massive thing. And of course, Creative Kids, where it's kind of a shout out to the old Discovery Center, where we are recreating a typical Atlantic Canadian town, and kids will be able to walk in and role play different experiences. So we'll have a construction zone, a doctor's office, there'll be an art studio, a music gallery, and they're going to be walking down Main Street with a big town clock, and the parents will sit in a cafe and just let their kids play, and we'll of course have supervision. But it'll be a fun experience for them, creating what it's like and how the town is interwoven together. We'll have a grocery store and a farm as well, and the kids will be able to walk under. We've built some plantings, and they'll be able to go under and see the roots of the plantings. So I'm just going to show you a little bit about what the Science Center looks like. One of the things we're very proud of, we'll be able to do a lot of, the final point, we have something called an immersive dome. It'll be one of a kind, we believe, globally. We've talked to some architects. It's your typical planetarium, but on steroids. And you'll be able to create your own content. Local community groups can create content and show films in there. We also have a data set which takes you through the universe and the cosmos, but you can be immersed under the ocean, on Sable Island, anywhere you choose to be. We can even have real-time video and show it before shows. So the interesting thing about it is we'll be able to display shows on the outside of the dome. So in our water gallery, we can show real fish swimming under the Atlantic Ocean, interspersed with the fish in the touch tank. So it'll be a very interesting spot. Of course, our programming will continue, and I'm just going to give you a little snapshot into the new Science Center on the next slide here. Andrew's seen this already, so. And hopefully it plays. Okay. Yeah. Let's try going forward a bit. No? I will show it to you at the end. How's that? It doesn't seem to connect. Okay. So a little bit about the new model. Public service engagement. We are trying to that we're working with here called Cura. They're focused on citizen science and getting people to test their own watersheds. And so we're working very closely with groups like that, really get into community partnerships, and we look forward to working closer with Rotary, maybe even as a venue for one of your meetings and so on. The focus is the city is using this term being bold. I'm using it now because I think it makes a lot of sense, is we want people to be bold. We want our youth to take chances and risk-taking. Kelvin Ogilvie, Senator Kelvin Ogilvie, defined innovation, the concept of innovation, as not just the idea, but the successful implementation of the idea. And quite often, implementing an idea takes a lot of time and risk and hardship and hard work and so on. So we're really, in all of our programming, we're not just letting the kids come up with the idea, encouraging them to come up with the idea. We're showing them the process of taking it to conclusion. And we're even talking about, talking to a couple of local law firms about sponsoring, the top 5 ideas each year for a patent and to take it to the next level. So there'll be some very interesting features there. So as I've mentioned, the campaign, we're actually a little further than that. We're at 90%. You'll hear much more about it. We have the concept we call Believe. You'll notice the B everywhere on our business cards and so on. And this is a little bit of a shout out to the honeybees in Nova Scotia. And early on, one of our first images, we wanted to show that technology is not at odds at nature, that technology and nature don't just coexist, but they can complement each other if approached in the right way. So early on, we had the image of a robotic bee pollinating a Nova Scotia apple blossom. And it's evolved into just the flight of the honeybees, and this is over a period of a few years, and we're very interested in trying to illustrate the message of science behind studying bees, and the bees that tie to our flight gallery aerodynamics and so on. There's a lot of interesting things, applications, and so we've bit into this. And our public campaign, Believe, is actually launching soon to take us to the opening of the new center, building excitement. So there would have been a video about what's happening now. And if you bear with me, I do have a stick I might be able to play. We can try it. And just to show the video. Is he working on it there?
Do you want to do it from here or from that?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's the yes, and you just go right to. Sorry about this. Yeah, it's on there. I'll come over. Yeah, and why don't we take questions while we're loading up the video? We don't seem to be video friendly on the PC. Yeah. So any questions about the new center or science or what we're doing at Discovery Center? You've had enough. Oh, okay. Okay, so we're, you know where the farmer's market is? I don't know, you might have pin. Yeah, where the farmer's market is, it's right next to it. There's a concrete block, a building, the new Nova Scotia Power building on Lower Water Street. There's a concrete block right on the front. So we're repurposing that. It has no floors or anything, and it's an empty shell right now. It's really a plus. So we are just putting in the floor plates and the services and the exterior cladding. It's going to be a beautiful building when it's done. If we can get the video up. You'll sound good. So yeah, it's 23,000 right now, and it'll be 50,000 in the new center. So it's a big jump. The beauty is we don't pay rent in the new facility. It's a beautiful deal, and also a bit lower operating costs because we're in an older building. We'll see some, much more efficient operation than the new one. Yeah, we're actually tapping into Nova Scotia Power has built a LEED Platinum, so they've gone to the extreme of a new, top of the level environmental, and we're tying into their services, so using the geothermal and just hooking in rather than building all of our own services. It makes sense, yeah. It looks promising, but it's not playing. Oh, there we go. Okay, the new Discovery Center, finally. I do have one more parting competition or trivia question for you. Another prize is available for a lucky winner. And right now we have an exhibit on called Sherlock Holmes, the Clock Tower Mystery. And some might say, what does that have to do with science? Well, throughout the process, we actually are we have programming around the exhibit dealing with forensic science and CSI type experiments, but we're really teaching visitors about the method of deduction and following a process and so on, a little bit of the scientific method tied in. So I'm going to ask a question, a little bit of Atlantic Canadian or Nova Scotia content, and I'm going to ask somebody to name me the name of the person that invented kerosene and is in the discovery. Okay, this man over here, Gessner. You win another guest pass. Family of 5. So, I'd like to thank you very much for having me here today and listening to a little bit of our story. I wanted to talk a bit more about community building and building the center with a little bit of science peppered in. And if there are any further questions, yeah.
How much attention is being put into accessibility within the facility, within the presentations for persons with physical cognitive?
Oh, actually, we're thinking about it a lot to the point where the plane, we are actually picking the model, like a real plane, the model of a plane where we can actually have someone in a wheelchair be lifted into the cockpit. So it's at that level of detail. I mean, I can't promise we're going to have everything sorted out, but I know that we're looking at that very carefully. And even in the dome, we have seating for accessibility that we had to set up special seating. It's a very complicated project. And that's just one of the things. Actually, those are the nice things to do. There's a lot of other things that have popped up. You know, as you build a project, you figure these things. Yeah, yeah. It's like renovating. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sure.
Yeah, can you tell me a little bit about the capital campaign that you did, sort of how you made up to that 18 million or so
Yeah.
so far, and then a little bit about your operational metrics about, you know, staffing, what's it cost to run it, although your rent is all free, but you know,
Yeah.
and then for some consumer, you know,
Yeah.
it's gonna cost the kid $30.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, no. Okay, there's 3 questions in there. I'll take them one at a time. So the first question is a little bit about the fundraising. I think it's very important when you start a new project not to approach people with an empty hat in hand. You need to have something in that hat and find that private sector partner first. Sugar mommy or sugar daddy, somebody that you can partner with, get it all signed, sealed, delivered. Because that was one thing, it took a while to get the deal sorted out with Nova Scotia Power. They have a lot of engineers and lawyers there. So you know, that's the way they operate, and it's, you know, so we have to have everything lined up very well. And once we had that, we were able to approach other private sector individuals and the public sector. So at least we weren't coming in with nothing. We had something to show them. So I think that's very important. And the free rent model was very important. And your second question was about operating costs. We do have plans, so we're being very cautious on our operating costs. You know, Andrew, who's on our board, knows that we're certainly not rich. We're very happy if we get, you know, a few $1,000s surplus at the end of the year, but we've had better years that we've reinvested back into the facility. Right now we're about 18 staff, and our plan is to grow maybe to about 25. So we're planning to have a sustainable staff, and our models have shown if our admissions now are 85,000 paid admissions, we're saying if we can get to 100 to 110, that's a little bit, so we haven't been crazy saying we're going to double our admissions, and the architects are telling us 250,000 people. As you know, when you plan for higher admissions or higher revenue, we have a higher expense to match it. So we're being very cautious as we roll it. On your third question. Oh, family. So our intent, one of the best values actually that we need to advertise a lot more is our membership. We have an $85 a year membership right now. It might go to $100 at most in the new center. And that gives you access to any science center that's a member of the Association of Science and Technology Centers, which is 600 science centers. So you can go to the Ontario Science Center, show your membership card from Nova Scotia, and walk in for free. So that purpose is alone, as well as the admission. We're always going to try to be lower than the cost of a movie and competitive with the local as much as we can with any other local attraction. So you're not going to see prices go to like Disneyland type level. It'll be $12, $15 at most, maybe special shows. It's actually $10 right now to get in. And so we're trying to keep those prices reasonable. And we also have what's called a free family access night that we're planning for on Wednesday nights that people can come in for free, and it's sponsored by a major donor. So those things all alleviate any financial pressure. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Wait, you can stay. You can stay. So I have the honor of saying thank you. I think I speak for all the Rotarians, the conference committee, our youth exchange students, our interactors to say that your energy and enthusiasm for community building and youth and health science is evident, and I think we were probably very inspired by your energy and enthusiasm, and probably all want to rush back to our own clubs and continue working on projects and see what new things we can do.
Never give up. That's my only, never give up.
Never give up. And I just got a note that in addition to this small token of our appreciation, there is some money in here to sponsor a group of children to go to the Discovery Center.
Oh, that's awesome.
So thank you once
very
again.
Much. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. To the youth as well.
Thank you as well, Dov. I was the executive director of the Discovery Center when it made its move from Scotia Square to where it is now. And it has come so far that it's quite rewarding and delightful to see the growth that it's had and the changes that have occurred. So I know, I'm an archive. Thank you. Don't you love it when you're in an archive? Make my day. Okay, so now we got to move fast. So here's the deal. Lunch is